DC podcast. My name is Dr. DC himself, and each week we do something with the Weird and Wonderful World of DC. We talk about the Weird and Wonderful World of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you.
It took me a minute.
Yeah, and joining me this week from across the airwaves, it's my sister. Almost called you Dom Malnick Toretto, but that's for the Patreon. It's Mallory.
Yeah, you got to use my government name here.
Yeah. Your I was gonna say God given, but he didn't do it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Not as far as I know. Don't give our parents that much credit.
Yes. Welcome back. It's been a minute since you've been on a main feed episode.
Yeah. We had you on as a guest on our podcast about a month ago.
Yeah.
Talking Johnny Bravo and various other things.
And I made it about 9/11, of course.
I mean, as you do. It's one of your best talents.
I say.
Do you have that on your resume under special skills?
I was just gonna say, I think a not insignificant consolation prize after having been snubbed for your 9/11 episode was you referring to me as a 9/11 meme enthusiast. And honestly, I think it's only spiraled since then. Richard sends me stuff. Everyone in my life that finds a 9/11 thing sends it to me.
I would like to clarify that when I said, do you have that on your resume? I don't want you to say under special skills 9/11 as in you could do 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good at
You have to be a bit more specific than that.
Sorry, I'm good at 9/11. I think is the proper way to pluralize that. Yeah, no, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the last time you were on the main feed, you were on with your co-host from the Pop Capsule podcast, and we were talking about Martian Manhunter being addicted to Oreos.
I believe so, yes. Yeah. I believe so.
It's a while ago now.
I mean, I don't know why it's taken this long, because I'm truly like an ideal guest for this podcast.
Okay.
I know very little about comics.
Yeah.
What I lack in knowledge, I make up for in being overly enthusiastic about other things.
Sure.
And I will find a variety of ways to make fun of you. So I don't know why it's taken us this long. It's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, for all of you freeloaders out there that haven't signed up for the Patreon, if you sign up at the Golden Age tier, you get access to Toretto Talks, the Fast and Furious rewatch series that Mallory and I did together. You can hear some incredible song parodies, some spicy takes about sleeve length and formality. There's all sorts of thoughts about the Fast universe.
Our general takes on Vin Diesel's ambiguous ethnicity throughout the series.
Yeah, his slow morph to full Hispanic.
I will say, if you haven't subscribed to the Patreon, you should absolutely do it. I myself was a Patreon subscriber for the longest time. You know, times is tight. The $5 a month.
Well, I mean, this isn't.
If you can't listen,
obviously,
to those episodes, hit me up. I'll hook you up with them on the side. You don't have to pay.
Jesus Christ. You're dealing black market podcast episodes. We're truly in the darkest timeline.
It's just me in a trench coat in an alley going, do you want to hear about Fast 6?
Yeah. Do you want to hear our episode on Hobbs and Shaw?
Except that would be like, do you want to hear our episode on Hobbs and Shaw?
Yeah, on what you might call a champagne problem.
Yeah. Ruby the size of a tangerine.
No, that's Michael Caine.
It's all the same.
I will say the Statham impressions, at least on this show and in real life for me, have all boiled down to the, don't you know who I am? I just say that and then insert a profession. Don't you know who I am? I'm the plumber.
Have you seen videos of Jason Statham before he was an actor?
Yes. Yeah, when he was a diver.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The one video that I saw, he basically he was a competitive diver. He doesn't dive. The commentators roast him a bit, and he go, "I guess that's why he switched." Uh, it's still Doctober. Ho, ho, ho. Happy Halloween. And so, and so that's part of a month of spooky episodes.
Does it feel worse doing it by yourself? Like I know at
It's,
least when you have Richard,
I
it's
mean,
it's
technically I'm not
something.
by myself. You're here, but yes, it feels awful. Yeah, it's not good. Um, I've done a couple of solo dolo episodes on Ghost Facers, and I feel insane.
You know what?
Because sometimes I say something that I legitimately find funny, and I realize that the rhythm on the show is I say a thing I find funny, Richard laughs, and it gives me license to laugh. Without him there, I just am talking by myself. I burst into laughter. it's it's so sad.
I will say one of the benefits of not having Richard here this week
Right.
is that I 100% agree with you about how many t's come before Twitter.
Thank you.
He's
Thank you.
dead wrong. And as someone who was a musician, I am shocked that he can't count it out
It's
properly.
because all he ever did was like write things in like 7/5 and then like fuck up his bandmates. So he's got no sense of rhythm.
Did he
I'm not
did
surprised.
did he write the Bluey theme
Yeah.
with all those 5/4 bars?
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, it's Doctober, and what our spooky episode this week. I put it to you. I was like, "What's the sort of like spooky theme that you'd want to talk about?" And you came back with skeleton people, like, or as I've been calling them, Boney boys.
I I had one condition for coming on this podcast, and it was that you never use those two words together.
Do you know what I realized today? Why I've been calling them Boney boys is because do you watch like Make Some Noise, like any of the Dropout shows
Yes.
or anything like that?
Oh, like Noise Boys? So you're calling them Boney Boys?
No, it's because there's one particular clip of Brennan Lee Mulligan doing Tim Curry doing an ad for Hot Topic.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he's chain wallets. And but in it he just talks about Jack Skellington, that bony boy. And I realize that's what I'm thinking of.
I do know that exact clip. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. So we're talking about skeleton characters.
But yeah,
Why
I
did
went
you
with
pick this?
skeletons.
Why did you go with this?
I mean, I felt that there were other ones that one, either you've covered before, or two were too obvious. Like, I think it's pretty bold of me, of all people, to be like, we're going to talk about bats. No. It's been on. We've lent more to like some goofier topics. We've talked about like cartoon and comic crossovers. We've talked about the Martian Manhunter Oreo. Like it's always been a little on like the sillier side. And so this was something that I could see kind of like straddling that line a little bit potentially.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's totally fair. I mean, it sort of begs the question though. What is your exposure to skeleton folk in comic books? Like, are there any characters that from like a video game or a cartoon or anything where you're like, who's that guy? Or is this going to be a total, like, every single one is going to be like a new experience?
I mean, it's going to be a little bit like that. I did do some research.
Whoa.
So
Did you just type in Boney Boys
Fuck
into
you.
the DC Wiki?
no, I typed in skeletons in DC Comics and realized I spelled skeletons wrong and was like, that's not a good start.
Skletons.
There were too many E's. Skeletons? But no, I did check out a few characters, and so I know like I have a teensy little like taster, like a fun sized chocolate bar of starter knowledge.
Right.
But I'm obviously interested to learn.
All right. Well, I mean, last thing before we dive in an even broader sense, what's the most recent superhero thing you've taken in? Could be Marvel, could be DC, but if you like most recently, what's your last encounter with kind of this realm of pop culture?
I mean, what I will say, the very first episode that I did with you and Richard, literally the only two comic things that I had ever engaged with were reading Watchmen
Sure.
and the Tobey Maguire like Spider-Man movies,
It's like such insane two things.
which was terrible. But since then, like in the pandemic, my husband and I did a full Marvel watch through.
Sure.
We've watched all of the Batman movies and the new Joker. Like I
Oh,
don't
like
really
you've
follow
seen,
a lot
like,
of.
the new Joker, like the
Oh,
second
not
one?
no, not the second one.
Oh, okay. Good.
No, I watched the first one. I don't need to watch another.
I agree.
I don't really follow any of the TV shows particularly closely. But probably the last thing I did try and watch is we did try and watch Watchmen. And
like the Zack Snyder movie or the HBO show?
the HBO show.
Oh yeah, nice.
And I had a really hard time getting into it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I think because of having read the book and having seen the Zack Snyder movie, I had this expectation of what it was going to be, and as soon as it kind of took the story in a different direction, I was just like lost. So
You were like, ugh, it's so woke now.
We covered it on our podcast, but I did choose a movie for my husband and I to watch the other week. We watched Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, but I just remember it got nominated alongside some other things.
Yeah, he plays this like survivalist guy who has his 6 kids off the grid, and like after his wife dies, they kind of have to interact with regular society for the first time. Anyways, I thought it was going to be very much up our alley. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The entire time we watched it, my husband was like, "They're commies and hippies." Just like,
I mean, that's very funny.
yeah. And then there was like a scene they like took something from a grocery store. He's like, "And they steal?" I was like, "Okay, come on."
I mean, that's pretty funny. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a bunch of questions about Boney boys. So let's start by going to Instagram. Now we're going to Instagram.
Take some questions and answer them.
Can't wait for that to come out in the edit.
Are we not in sync on your end?
We're absolutely not in sync.
Oh, okay. We sounded great on my end.
Oh, okay. Nope.
Should we have clapped before we started this recording?
No,
My
because
bad.
I don't think the clap would stop lag. You both of us live in like remote northern Canada, but not in the same remote northern Canada.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So, first question on Instagram comes from Alfred Is Zaddy, who asks, is Mr. Bones' skull appearance a mutation or the result of magic? In your quick Google search, did you come across Mr. Bones?
I did come across Mr. Bones, and the little bit that I saw of him was he was kind of described as like a Nick Fury-esque character.
He does kind of morph into something like that. You know, in the most modern version of him is he goes by he's called Director Bones now, and he's the director of the Department of Extra Normal Operations, which is like a government department sort of tasked with monitoring, controlling, dealing with metahumans, so people with powers. So there's all sorts of these like kind of agencies and shit in DC, but Director Bones is in charge of the DEO. It brings him up against characters like Manhunter and stuff like that in the comics, Batwoman and some things like that. Mr. Bones looks like he's just a skeleton wearing a normal suit. And the short answer to the question is all of his flesh is invisible. So it's not that he doesn't have it, it's that it's fully transparent.
I think that's the worst of both worlds. Like, it's bad having flesh and it's bad not having flesh, but having see-through flesh, like you're getting none of the benefits of like covering up what's underneath.
Right.
But all of the like discomfort of having something like restrictive that you spill food on, that like
Sure.
I mean, on the plus side, no one would see his acne when he was going through like skeleton puberty.
Well, I mean, listen, here's the crazy. If you think that's the worst thing about his skin, I've got news for you, because he sweats cyanide, and he has this thing called the cyanide touch. He basically, like, he can't touch people. It'll kill them.
Jesus. That was like the second Bloodhound Gang song, but it didn't catch on.
Cyanide touch?
Yeah.
I see what you
Yeah.
did there.
I would like you to explain something that I read about Mr. Bones
Sure.
that I don't quite understand how it fits in. So was he Dr. Benjamin Love?
No.
He was one of the children.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
well, this is as good a time as we might as well just segue into the next question here.
Okay.
So, next question comes from Max Nopo, who asks, can you give a brief history of Mr./Director Bones?
Beautiful.
I think I first encountered him in Jeff Johns' JSA, but there seems to be a lot of backstory there that I'm missing. So, you brought up Dr. Love, disgusting name, awful name.
Yes. Yeah, there's only two Dr. Loves that I've ever encountered, and it's this guy who sounds awful,
Right.
and Malachi Love, who was the teenager pretending to be a doctor in the United States, which was a hilarious scam.
Is that like a real thing?
Oh, yeah, he was like 16 and pretending to be a doctor.
He was a Doogie Howser scenario?
He just like walked into a hospital with a lab coat, and they were like, "You, yes," and he was like giving medical advice to
Oh
people.
my God, he kenned it.
Yeah. So this is what I gathered
Okay.
from my readings into Mr. Bones.
Sure.
Was that there was this Dr. Benjamin Love, a gynecologist, who injected
Awful
combination.
Awful combination of name and vocation. Awful.
Yeah, it's like being like
Spread them. I'm Dr. Love.
if your last name, if you have the misfortune of having the last name Diddler, you need to choose any other profession. You
Yeah.
can't be a teacher. You can't be a gynecologist. You can't be a party clown. Like, there's a few things you just can't be. And I think Dr. Love should have made that same choice.
I'm Franklin Diddler, the clown you ordered.
Most clowns famously use their last name.
They introduce themselves with their full legal name.
I'm Timothy Ross Diddler. Anyways,
Yeah,
Dr. Love.
Benjamin Love, the worst possible name for a gynecologist.
Dr. Benjover Love.
Nice.
So he injects 6 pregnant women with an experimental drug
Yes.
that makes each of their children a metahuman.
Yeah. And then he kind of like kidnaps and raises the kids
Yes.
himself, and like there's all this kind of like, as you might expect from a gynecologist named Love, it's all very problematic and bad.
Yes.
But Bones is one of these kids, and they form a sort of super team called Helix. But I think the idea is that like Love kind of like tricks them, so they're kind of doing kind of half bad and stuff like that. They keep bumping into like Infinity Inc., which is the super team made up of like the next generation JSAers. So like Fury and Silver Scarab and Jade and stuff like that.
Right.
They keep bumping into them, and eventually, like, Mr. Bones realizes that he's been sort of inadvertently, a little bit vertently, he's been a villain, and he sort of turns over a new leaf. He gets like manipulated and stuff into killing Dr. Love, I think.
Right.
And then he like leaves the team, and you don't see him for a while. And the next time you see him, more or less, he's working for the DEO.
Right. Now, he, as well, something that I read, he gets his leg bit off, but then that person dies from cyanide poisoning.
Yeah, exactly. So a fun fact about Mr. Bones, not only is all of his flesh transparent, not only does he sweat cyanide and he can't touch people because he has a cyanide touch, he also is missing a leg. So he has a prosthetic leg, which I imagine is some. It's not just like a prosthetic. It's like a robot leg or something like that. But
I mean, like
But
a
yes,
prosthetic
yeah.
bone would look super cool.
Actually, that it would. Yeah, he'd be like, "Can you make it invisible, but for the bones?" And they're like, "It's not really how we
Yes.
build prosthetics." He's like, "Can you make it bones?"
He gives them the sad story. My dad was a diddler. You need to make this for
You
me.
don't get it. My dad was a gynecologist named Love. You're like, oh my dad, this guy's seen some shit. Oh. But yeah, I mean, so he was sort of a sometime villain turned sometime hero who kind of hangs up both and goes to work for like a civilian government agency that kind of monitors and deals with metahumans. So
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's great about Director Bones is just his like aesthetic. His look is great. He's in a suit now. Like when he was with Infinity Inc. and stuff, he had like a super suit that's like insane and silly.
Yeah.
But now it's just like a skull guy in a suit smoking a cigar. He looks fucking crazy. He's awesome. Yeah.
Yes. A couple of other things that I saw with him in this kind of DEO role, he sometimes butts heads with Waller. Like they sometimes cross paths in
mean,
their like bureaucratic
Yeah.
realm.
All of these agencies barely play nice with each other. There's like Argus and the DEO and Checkmate and like all of these different groups in DC, and they sort of
Yeah.
they're all maybe like their stated purpose is maybe all kind of aligned as a mission, but they all want to do it their own way, and they all have ulterior motives, and they're all playing their own personal game in amongst the professional game. So yeah. Bones and Waller have a sort of history and stuff like that. But
And then the last point that I saw about him that I was disturbed by was that after he took up this post at the DEO, is that he often speaks in like bad rhyme.
that was a thing briefly. I don't.
Okay.
My experience with Director Bones, certainly in the kind of modern era, I don't remember him rhyming.
Okay.
Certainly nothing like post Rebirth. I don't think. I can't imagine he was doing that in the New 52 Batwoman or stuff like that.
Right.
But
yeah.
It was briefly, I think, a thing, and then everyone was like, "That fucking sucks."
Yeah. Do you think that they missed an opportunity by not calling him Dr. Bones, and then they could use like the Aqua song?
Yeah, they could use the Aqua song like in a comic book, like a written, not audio format.
Yeah, famously a very easy medium to transition.
But also, oh no, wait, hang on. What's the Counting Crows song? Is that Mr. Jones?
That's
could do
Mr. Jones.
Bones. Yeah, Mr.
Mr.
Bones.
Bones and me.
La 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 la.
I mean, if you're talking about make some noise, Zach Reno does a fantastic Counting Crows
Not
improv song.
Not a surprise at all. But yeah, that's the sort of like broad strokes about Mr. Bones.
Love it.
Next question comes from Doug Thune, who says, Lord Deathman, his appearance in Batman the Brave and the Bold, best show ever. Can you please talk about that? Have you ever seen or heard of Lord Deathman?
I haven't. 10 out of 10 name. I gotta say.
So Lord Deathman is actually a character from like the 60s in Batman comics. And in his original appearances, his thing was that he was like a yogic expert. And so he could like fake his own death by like through meditation. He could basically stop his bodily processes. So he would fake his own death. They'd like send him to the morgue. He'd wake up and he'd escape and commit another crime.
Oh shit. That's actually pretty cool.
Later, it got retconned or something happened to him. I can't remember what the situation was, but that he could actually regenerate and resurrect himself. So Lord Deathman, like now is like fully like, he actually dies and comes back. Right. I think the most recent kind of version of him, the stuff that we would see in like Robin and like the Lazarus Island kind of stuff, is there's something to do with it. His blood and the Lazarus pits are like chemically similar or connected in some way. I'm fuzzy on some of the details, but yeah, Lord Deathman, essentially his thing is that he could die and come back. So, yeah, he he was, I think, just called Deathman at first. He becomes Lord Deathman because he has an adventure in Japan. And that's the sort of like them trying to work on like a Japanese naming convention kind of thing. It sort of sounds like more like a manga villain or something if he's Lord Deathman.
Now,
but that adventure is the thing that they adapt in an episode of Brave and the Bold. Batman the Brave and the Bold. Have you ever seen any episodes of that cartoon?
no, I've heard you and Richard talk about it quite a bit, but it's not one that I've dove into.
So that's the one where Oswald from the Drew Carey Show voices Batman.
Don't like that, but continue.
He's so good.
Oh, really? So good, okay.
And the whole the show's got a whole kind of like 60s vibe of like, you know, and that's why we don't pickpocket, or like he would like there's like a lesson, and it's like silly and it's bright and it's colorful and it's
right, a little after school special.
I mean, a little bit, but it's just more about being fun than being dramatic, like Batman animated series was.
Okay.
But there's an episode where Batmite, I think, is telling some different stories about Batman, and each one kind of has a different style in that. And the one that they do with Lord Deathman is like basically that adventure in Japan, or like one of the early adventures where he's like faking his death and stuff like that. The art style's different and things like that. I don't remember a ton about it other than I think he like explodes in a helicopter and Batman and Robin are like, I'm sure he parachuted away. It's just like,
Jesus.
It's sort of, they sort of end on him like exploding in a helicopter and Batman laughing.
They just like high five.
It's kind of, which is sort of funny to me. That's my memory of that one, but I might be missing something. But
so I did a little quick search here, mostly so I could see the picture and kind of get an idea. You were definitely right about the like Lazarus blood thing,
right? And
it actually mentions that Ra's al Ghul took his unconscious body and tried to like siphon out the like Lazarus stuff to like put it back into the Lazarus pit.
There's a whole bunch of crazy shit was happening with the Lazarus pits at the start of like 2 years ago.
The other kind of disturbing thing that I found, because you said Lord Deathman, and I'm like, man, what a cool name.
Yeah.
His real name is Larry.
That's a newer thing. He never had a name in like the old.
Okay, this is Prime
like,
Earth. Prime Earth. It says he's Larry.
So Prime Earth means post New 52. Means after 2011. He never used to have a name. He was just like a guy. He became like a Japanese crime lord, and he tried to attack in Batman Incorporated, the Morrison run on that, I think. He tries to attack like members of Super Young Team, which is like a Japanese superhero team that are like obsessed with fame and things like that.
Love that. I love that. That's cool.
So yeah, he tries to go after some members of Super Young Team, and that's a thing. In the more recent stuff with Robin on Lazarus Island, yeah, he's involved in a way I don't fully remember, but you also meet Flatline, which is a new character that's his sidekick. And Flatline has a metahuman ability to absorb skills from the dead, or from people that she kills, basically. And Flatline and Robin have a little, thing. Because it's Damian Wayne Robin, I should say.
Flatline voiced by Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes, yeah. That's not off-putting at all. Kiefer Sutherland's voice.
What that joke was for two people, and they're us.
There's only two people that have ever seen Flatliners. Yeah. But yeah, that's Lord Deathman. He does have a great name. I'm a big fan of like a silly name, and I gotta say, in general, some great names out of the world of manga. Like some, A plus character names. I don't mean like real person names, but I like whatever your like superhero name or your villain name or whatever is. A plus names in the world of manga.
I just watched Howl's Moving Castle for the first time this weekend. Right. So good. But yeah, I would say like The Witch of the Waste.
Oh, great name.
Great name. Fantastic name.
Yeah, I love that. Next question comes from This Moonbeam They 5, who asks,
are they okay?
I don't know, man. Somebody check on This Moonbeam They 5.
They're not 5. They're not 5.
They ask, can you talk about Dr. Phosphorus and how normal he is in Arkham City Order of the World. So, first things first, Dr. Phosphorus, Batman villain,
Okay.
who gets in a nuclear
Ooh.
accident, as I recall, and his skin is turned to, like, well, it originally was just his skin. I think now it's his whole body is turned
Yeah.
to, like, chemically to, like, phosphorus. So he's always on fire, always
He's like
emitting
that, like
radiation.
radioactive color.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's that kind of thing where, like, you can see the outline of, like, Director Bones, fully transparent flesh.
Yeah.
He just looks like a skull on a body. But Dr. Phosphorus is that thing where you can, like, see the outline of where his body is, and then, like, he's glowing and his bones are, like, black in it or
Right.
whatever. So yeah, I mean, a character that has the sort of power to, like, project energy and absorb energy and is largely just walking radiation and chemical reaction and stuff like that.
Right.
Has fought Batman a few times, but is also a notable, somewhat recurring character in the Starman series that I love from the 90s.
Right.
He gives Ted Knight, the original Starman, the cancer that will kill him. Well, that would kill him if Ted didn't blow himself up. But
Oh, Jesus.
saving the day, blew himself up, saving the day. But yeah, I mean, Dr. Phosphorus, a really cool design, I gotta say. I love the look of that character. Have you ever
Right.
encountered this character before?
I haven't, but I totally agree with you. Just a quick glance at some photos of it. Like, that would be the kind of character that for someone who isn't super into comics, that would make me like turn my head to look at a cover.
Yeah, totally. I think he'd be like, I actually think sometimes we get a question that's like, who do you want to see them put in, like, a live action Batman movie? And I keep circling back to, like, Clayface, Mr. Freeze, but do it right, like, stuff like
Right.
that. But Dr. Phosphorus would be an interesting one to throw in there too. Like, he is relatively minor as far as, quote, Batman villains go,
Yeah.
but his look is so goddamn cool. Very
Yeah.
spooky and scary. And also, like, that's a power that's also scary, where it's like you can't go near him, you can't, like, he cannot touch you. Like, shit like that is kind of scary and neat for like a regular person to have to fight against.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think part of why he's maybe not a bigger Batman villain is just the like challenge of having this very like hands-on combat type hero against this like radioactive, more supernatural, like as a one-on-one, it maybe doesn't work as clearly?
Yeah, I don't think so, to be honest. And honestly, I think people know that it's a cool idea because in the Batman Beyond cartoon, they make Batman like I would argue Batman Beyond's arch enemy is a character called Blight, who is essentially he's different. He's a different character, but he's essentially that show's version of Dr. Phosphorus.
Right.
He's got the same kind of design, vaguely the same powers.
Right.
He's a different character. Like, in Batman Beyond, that's a character named Derek Powers, who's like a neo-Gotham businessman and stuff. Dr. Phosphorus is a scientist named Anthony Sartorius or something. He's got like a crazy fucking name.
That's pretty cool. That's a good name.
But he ends up in like a nuclear accident. Like, speaking of the animated stuff, there's a character that was big on the animated series that's like a Gotham crime boss named Rupert Thorne. And he has something to do with, like, they want to make a nuclear facility and Gotham's like, no. And they're like, but what if we put it over here? And they build one and it immediately melts down. And
Right.
Dr. Phosphorus gets turned into, or Sartorius gets turned into Dr. Phosphorus.
Yeah.
Who could have seen it coming? But it's because of some sort of shady shit that Thorne did. And I can't remember what it was.
Right. Two things that I do see for Dr. Phosphorus was that he was in the Lego Batman movie.
Yes, you do see him. He is in there. Yeah.
Not as like a major role.
Yeah.
But that also he's going to be in the upcoming Creature Commandos voiced by Alan Tudyk,
Yes. So,
which I like. I instantly have faith in that.
So Creature Commandos is an animated series that is DCU canon. So this new James Gunn universe, this is canon to that universe. It includes Rick Flag Sr., so the dad of the character from like the Suicide Squad and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It includes Weasel. It includes Frankenstein.
Eli?
Yeah.
Eli Weasel?
Yes, yeah. It includes Frankenstein, GI Robot. It's going to include Dr. Phosphorus, all these kind of like monster characters, essentially.
Right. Cool. Oh, I love that.
And that comes out in December or something. Like it's
Like that's something I would check out. That sounds cool.
I think that'll be a fun one. So yeah, that's he is getting his due. And who knows, maybe if Commandos goes well, we'll get a live action version of him at some point too.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm down for it. I love the look. I feel like it's a very I could see it working in a way like if there's a movie or an episode where you have like a bigger villain and he's kind of, a secondary villain.
Right.
I could see that working very well.
Yeah, I gotta say I mean he stands up for me because I love that Starman series. And he only shows up in a few issues, but I was like, oh shit, Dr. Phosphorus, because I think he may have just that Starman series is somewhere around the time when the demon Neuron was boosting villains' powers. It might have been around then. But I love that idea of like a guy who's just emitting radiation, even standing next to him is like bad for you. So like the having to fight him has all these extra layers of challenge.
Right.
All right. So next question comes from this is you tried so hard to be smooth about that. Sorry, I just gotta talk through this. We're slowly backing up as I was talking, and then I could see you tried to lean to like kick your door closed, and you could not reach. And so,
No, I was full like Michelle Kwan. I was one leg fully extended, body parallel.
incredible.
Oh, that's getting left in. Shit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I don't edit these. The next question comes from Reddit, where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
Never.
Galaxy Eyes Ruler asks, please talk about Atomic Skull. I think 2 people have used that name, so tell me which version of the character do you prefer? Atomic Skull is a Superman villain.
Ooh.
I mean, this comes up sometimes. It's like, obviously in Marvel, Spider-Man's got the best kind of villains, gallery. Maybe followed closely by the X-Men, maybe.
Right.
And then in DC, it's obviously Batman's got the best one. Followed by, I'd make a strong argument for the Flash. The Superman villains are interesting because you sort of have a couple of big top tier ones. Luthor, Zod, Brainiac.
Yeah.
You go like, whoa, cool. And then you kind of go like, oh, Parasite, cool. All right. Yeah. Livewire, cool. Yeah. You keep going down. You go like Master Jailer, Atomic Skull. You like all these kind of weird ones.
Very quickly. Like it's a real downgrade between the second and third lines of villains.
Totally. I mean, Wonder Woman's like that too, where you go like Cheetah, Ares, amazing. And then you go, who's next? You go like Dr. Psycho, and you go like, okay. And you go, who's next? And you go, Dr. Cyber? Like,
So I did actually run into Atomic Skull a little bit here my musings online.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah, not just like on the street.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that's great. Let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah, ran into him at Tim Hortons. He's just melting all the coffee pots because he didn't get his ice cap in time.
Yeah, just a giant like purple flame ordering a dark roast.
Yeah. So I see the 2 different versions that they're talking about. So there's the Albert Michaels version from 1978 originally, and then there's the Joseph Martin version from a little bit later, Adventures of Superman 483. The first version, that Albert Michaels version, I gotta talk about this outfit
Oh
costume.
yeah,
Sorry.
because so people who are know the more recent comics, Atomic Skull is sort of purple colored, like it's purple flames, and he's
Yeah.
got this kind of big kind of suit and stuff, and he's like a floating skull in all these kind of purple radiation flames.
Yeah.
But the
This guy
original Atomic
has
Skull,
kinky boots. Like
absolutely.
these boots go all the way up, and he's more of like a yellow and green color. So again, giving that kind of like weird, like radioactive
and
essence.
and specifically the original Atomic Skull, because it is Albert Michaels in current continuity,
Yeah.
but it's sort of Albert Michaels, but kind of with the I can't remember the guy's name,
The
Jason
Joseph
something,
Martin.
Joseph Martin, sorry. It's kind of with his backstory a bit, like they sort of merged them together a little bit.
Yeah.
But the original Albert Michaels one is basically a guy that gets like MK Ultra.
Yeah,
They
like he
like
has
fuck with him until he has like they call them like atomic bursts of psychic. It's like it's something like it's a vaguely psychic power, but also atomic or something like that. Like
so he had an it says that he had a nervous system disorder and he couldn't find a cure. So the organization Skull gives him this radium device that, like you said, gives him these brain
a lot of red
blasts.
flags. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
say, it's like medical science has failed me, so I've gone to an organization called Skull, and they're gonna give me radium.
It's because they did that, like they did like the European pronunciation. So he's like, "Ooh, Skull,
Okay,
Skull."
yeah.
And so yeah, he basically like couldn't control them, and it kind of snowballed from there, swearing revenge on
So he puts
everyone.
on a yellow and green costume and like a skull mask and shit like that.
Yeah.
So it's like a very different version than the later one, which is now kind of morphed into Albert Michaels, which is like nuclear accident. It's like a submarine or some
Yes.
shit.
Yeah.
Nuclear accident. Guy gets
Yeah.
nuclear powers. It like burns his skin off, and he's got these kind of not dissimilar to a Dr. Phosphorus or something like that.
Yeah.
He's got these sort of energy powers. I'll say the in animation there are a couple of notable appearances of Atomic Skull in Justice League Unlimited or whatever. Atomic Skull shows up there, and he is dressed in yellow and green, but looks more like the more modern
Right.
Atomic Skull, a skull floating
Okay.
in a flame kind of thing.
Yeah.
On Young Justice, that Atomic Skull looks like the fucking original Albert Michaels one. He's like a guy
Right.
with like a gaunt face and a weird outfit that's kind of doing
Yeah.
like mind shit to make like powers or whatever.
This like original Albert Michaels Atomic Skull like costume
Yeah.
is honestly giving like big Scooby-Doo villain energy.
Yes.
Like
yeah,
someone
yeah.
would like pull off that skeleton mask and it would be like the
Mr.
theme park
Michaels.
operator.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Mr. Michaels from Skull.
Yeah, it's Mr. Michael, the ill scientist.
The ill scientist from Skull. I would have gotten away with it too if you didn't take my radium.
And then Scooby-Doo just starts growing another arm.
I as interesting as or rather as unique as that first one is, that feels really rooted in a time and place. The kind of
Yes,
like
very much so.
military experiment sort of thing. I kind of
Yeah.
I guess it's a little more basic, but I do like just a guy that gets in a nuclear accident becomes a nuclear hazard, essentially.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that second version was like that. And since the New 52, since 2011, they basically gave that to Albert Michael. So there's kind of only one Atomic Skull now. And it's, well, I say that continuity weaves and unweaves constantly. I'm sure someone will bring a different version, like the Joseph Martin one back. But Albert Michael more or less has Joseph Martin's backstory now. Like he never had a nerve thing, I don't think, or anything like that.
Yeah. I
prefer
feel like
that,
I
and
feel
I like the purple look better than the green and yellow, to be honest.
I agree with you on the look. I also feel like it is a much more like streamlined story. I feel like a really elaborate backstory, you need to be a pretty like top tier villain. Like if you're one of these like less commonly appearing villains, having a really complicated backstory probably works against you.
I also feel like that's the sort of thing you can pull off when it's like a twist that someone becomes a villain, where it's like you have a supporting
Right.
character who shows up a bunch. You can learn a bunch about them. We learned in that issue they got a nerve thing, and then over here they go like, oh, over here they did, blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
And then
yeah.
like 12 issues in, you go like, oh, fuck, now they're Atomic Skull, and now all of those things can feed in, and you can give it power, and you go, all
Yeah.
of that makes sense, but it is a lot, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you don't have a big arc, if they're just here for one issue, that's a lot to try and like
Yes.
cram in.
A thing I like is that Atomic Skull, like some Superman villains, has been given an opportunity to sort of like atone and take a sort of face turn, as it were, a skull turn, if you will. And so for a little bit, I'm one of the Atomic Skulls. I can't remember where in the continuity this is. Worked for like the Metropolis Science Division or whatever, which is like basically police or the special crimes
Right.
unit or whatever they call it, like basically the cops in Metropolis that have like energy guns and shit like that. Pretty
Right.
sure Atomic Skull worked for them for a little bit. He may have sort of slipped, but he, along with Parasite and some other characters, is one of those ones that Superman has managed to on occasion do some minor rehabilitation with,
Right.
which I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's underused. I would like to see more Atomic Skull because I think he's got a cool design, and again, I just sort of like the idea of it because it's interesting for Superman because Superman, like, he doesn't 100% just affect Superman. Maybe he can emit some radiation that fucks with Superman's ability to take in the sun or whatever. But like it's more of a hazard for everyone else. And I kind of like that in a Superman villain where Superman is he could maybe take this villain down easily, but he has to be more concerned about the
Right.
collateral damage or what happens to the people around them.
I could really be putting my foot in my mouth here for like the very next question or whatever.
Go for it.
But I was surprised by the like this is going to sound stupid, the realism of the origin of these skeletons. Like I was thinking skeletons in comics, there's going to be a lot more of this like supernatural element to it,
Right.
a lot more of like an undead kind of element, but like it's a lot of like nuclear disasters or like medical
Yeah.
things. Like they're trying to explain them in a much more like realistic and logical way than any of those kind of like other.
I think Atomic Skull might also have a case of the invisible flesh.
Right.
I think it's different than the
You say that as in like you come home from school with it. You're like, oh my god, my kid got the invisible flesh this week.
Yeah, did you see that episode of House MD where they first tested for lupus, but then he realized it was invisible flesh?
They really should have gotten that one right away. That's how you knew
Man,
he was on
fucking
too many
House always
painkillers.
gets his man. Um, they, but no, unlike Dr. Phosphorus, I think, where it's like his whole body becomes a chemical reaction. Like Phosphorus initially, I think it was just his skin, and then it's his whole body, essentially to the point where he's like living energy.
Yeah.
The thing with Atomic Skull, I think, is that I don't think it burns his skin. Like I think it's that it's some sort of reaction. It makes him like invisible, basically. And that's
Right.
why you can see
Yeah.
the bones.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
No,
sure. I guess
I
it's not that
prefer.
different, but I was thinking of Mr. Bones, and then
Yeah.
there's some differentiation, I think, because technically you can see Phosphorus's skin. He's just
Yeah.
glowing and shit, but
But like I do prefer this like the origin stories we've talked about so far.
Right.
I love that like more sciency background to them rather than the like, oh, he's a spirit or he died and then he's back and animated. Woo.
I mean,
Like,
honestly, spirits tend not to look like bones,
I guess.
which I think actually makes sense. Like,
Because spirit's not particularly like corporeal.
well, yeah, if you're a ghost, why be bones? is sort of what I would say.
If ghost, why bones?
If ghost, why bones? Like Dead Man, that's a ghost. He just looks like a
Right.
dude. He doesn't look like bones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. Next question comes from Armory Comics, who asks, who would win, Blight or Dr. Phosphorus? So these, like I said, these are essentially the same character, just in
Yes.
different kind of universes with slightly different backstories, but they're more or less meant to be the same thing. So we talked about Dr. Phosphorus, whatever his name is, Anthony Sartorius,
Yeah.
a scientist in a nuclear meltdown becomes this sort of like living, walking, chemical, radioactive event.
Yes.
Blight, again, is from Batman Beyond. Derek Powers, a businessman, is trying to like make and manufacture and sell this like awful nerve gas. When he fights Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond, he gets exposed to the nerve gas, and to cure him, they bombard his body with radiation, and the interaction of these things causes him to become this like glowing radioactive mess. He tries to like wear fake skin and stuff, but it keeps burning off of him, and he becomes Batman Beyond's, I would argue, arch enemy. So Batman
Right.
had the Joker, and yes, Batman Beyond fought the Joker a little bit, but really, Batman Beyond's arch enemy is Blight, because Derek Powers is also the guy who killed Terry's dad, or had Terry's dad killed, because Warren McGinnis was trying to blow the whistle on the whole nerve gas operation.
Right.
And his dad dies, and that's what propels Terry to become Batman, was to try and get revenge. And then obviously he learns to be Batman, like that kind of shit.
I will say, like, visually, I see that kind of difference in backstory, because yeah, Dr. Phosphorus has this very like I would say he's more skeletal, but with that like glow to him, whereas Blight looks like a guy
Right.
with some like a skull head and occasionally some other bones, but he's still like, there's a few where he's like muscly.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I also think Blight, just from the visuals, they tend to make Blight look. He glows, but he's still his shape, I think, to
Yes.
your point.
Yeah.
Dr. Phosphorus
Yeah.
looks unstable because there's
Exactly,
always
yeah.
flames and other things, and like
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't look like you totally see the outline of his body. Like Dr. Phosphorus looks unstable, and
Yes.
Blight just looks like he's glowing a lot. You know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Just visually.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Who would win? Blight is relatively powerful, but I think Dr. Phosphorus, with his like neuron bump, where he gets like an added juice when he sells his soul to the demon Neuron. So the same Dr. Phosphorus, more or less, that fights Starman. I think he could probably take him. Because Blight is still basically flesh and blood, just radioactive flesh and blood, and Phosphorus is like living energy.
The idea of having nothing left of your body but your soul and then selling it is crazy to me.
I mean,
like
that's a
like
cool way of putting it, actually.
like you literally that would be all you have left.
Yeah.
And then you're like, nope, it's not enough.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's true. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I also think Dr. Phosphorus is like crazier than
yeah.
Blight.
That's the
Like, Blight
the
retains
vibe
his-
I'm getting.
I mean, he's megalomaniacal. He's crazy in a different way, but he's kind of retains his intellect, and he's, if it weren't for the fact that he's a glowing green skeleton, he would probably still just be running his company.
I also
shit like that.
correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like Blight would be the kind of villain where he would have this like long exposition about what he did and what he's going to do with you, whereas Dr. Phosphorus is just gonna fuck you up.
I agree with that, actually, more or less. Yeah. I'm giving it to Dr. Phosphorus, I think.
Yeah. He would be, out of the two of them, the one I would least rather run into in an alley.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Next question comes from Acknowledge Me, who asks,
No, never.
this is a long one, so here we go.
Okay.
Why did it take so long for the Phantasm to make the jump from the DCAU to main continuity comics? By all accounts, the film was/is widely praised, and characters like Harley, Terry McGinnis, and Calder, who were all similarly praised in their animated appearances, made the jump much faster. Is this a case of the character's arc seemingly being explored fully in the film, thus taking any suspense out of a comic story featuring the Phantasm? Or has the archetype been used too much recently, considering characters like Hush, and to some extent Lincoln March, have used the, quote, friend from Bruce's past turned enemy of Batman, quote, more recently in comics canon? So,
God,
my first
acknowledge
question to
me.
you
More like
is-
abbreviate me.
Oh, fuck yeah, roast him, get his ass. Um, um, the Phantasm. Have you ever encountered this character? Have you ever seen the animated movie Batman: Mask of the Phantasm?
No, no, and it's not even like obviously there's a lot of DC stuff that I just recognize by name, even without having seen it. That's like never.
See, interestingly, so it's within the world of the animated series. It's Kevin Conroy as Batman. It's the Bruce Timm
Okay.
art style. It's all that
Yep.
stuff. This was a theatrically released
Oh,
animated movie that is in the early or references the early days of Batman, where this character Andrea Beaumont, who is this sort of like paramour of Bruce's, they essentially, the story is that they almost have a life together, except that she is also the Phantasm, this skull-faced villain with a kind of hook hand who is out for revenge. And where she can't let go of revenge, Bruce has to. And so it breaks up his one chance at happiness. And it's like,
wow.
it's a devastating movie. It's so good.
Wow.
It's
That's dark in such an unexpected way.
I would say that Mask of the Phantasm is one of the best Batman movies.
Wow.
If not the best, it's up there. If you put it up against live action ones, it's better than most of them.
Wow. A Christmas release.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's worth watching. But this character, Andrea Beaumont, the Phantasm, never made the jump to comics, basically, in all that time. I think there may have been the odd reference or like an Elseworld thing or something
Yes.
like that. But in the main continuity, we never really went there. Until a couple of years ago,
2020.
Batman Catwoman in that series introduced the Phantasm sort of properly.
Right.
There's a lot thrown around in this question. So one of the things is that other animated characters or characters that started in animation moved to comics faster. Harley Quinn, great example.
Yes. Yeah.
Only took a couple of appearances and people were like, we fucking love this character. And it didn't take much for her to become part of the main story.
Yeah.
Batman Beyond technically had a bunch of Elseworld comics for a long time, but then eventually was even incorporated into mainline DC continuity.
Right.
Calderon on Young Justice, his counterpart is Jackson Hyde, basically the second Aqualad and one of the current Aquamen. I had a very quick transition, like literally like they were coming out at the same time, basically.
Right. Who gets to, this is maybe me not understanding like the production side of comics. Who gets to make that decision on whether a character can kind of jump into like a main continuity? Is that like it's a writer saying, hey, I want to bring this person, I want to bring this character in? Is it more of like a DC as a whole company? Like who gets to make that choice?
I would say overall, this is without knowing all of the intricacies of it, but you need someone to want to bother to write them.
Yeah.
And some of that is based on the demand or the fee. Like Harley was like an undeniable phenomenon. It was always going to happen. But Paul Dini, one of the creative voices of that show, was also writing Detective Comics and was like, there was an easy transition to get Harley in there. I imagine there must be some modest legal maneuvering about like, I mean, technically DC owns the rights to things. It's work for
Yeah.
hire, you know, whether you're working
Yeah.
on a TV show or whatever. There must be some modest minor legal maneuvering about where something starts versus what medium you can move them into, but I can't imagine that it's like much of a hurdle.
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing is just, do you have a story for them? Is there a reason
Right.
to put them in? And then from an editorial perspective, there might be a little bit of sort of canon consideration where it's like
Right.
the show has a different history, so this character starts here. So in the comics, if you're going to do it, just find a different way to, you know what I mean? Like there might be a little bit of that kind of stuff, but a lot of these characters make a transition. Livewire, a Superman villain, a shock jock who gets electricity powers. She made the
Incredible.
transition. She made the transition to comics pretty easily. I think that the point that was made in this question is the right one, which is the Phantasm sort of has a complete arc
Right.
in that movie and doesn't really have a motivation to be the Phantasm outside of that.
Right.
Yeah, that's
can't-
kind of my feeling about it. Even in the Tom King, like the Batman Catwoman thing, I kind of go like, I guess the Phantasm could be like. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of that series. I don't really love it, and a lot of it just kind of feels like it doesn't need to be happening. That's sort of my feeling about it, and so in that way, Phantasm fits really well because I'm like, I don't think we need to be doing this.
Just from like the little summary I can see of that arc, it seems like she's there more as her like Andrea Beaumont persona, and like that's the more useful part rather than actually like Phantasm. It seems like it's that like how her arrival kind of changes their, you know, what's going on between Bruce and Selina, not necessarily like crime in Gotham.
Totally. And again, I think that's because the Phantasm has a very specific purpose for Andrea. She's not just like, and I guess I'm the Phantasm now. She's like, she has a goal. And I think we're sort of done with it.
Right.
I think it's well put in the question. I don't have a better reason why she wouldn't have transitioned. Because again, design wise, dope. Like Grim Reaper kind of like a sort of like future metal cyborg Grim Reaper kind of look. I think is like a really cool design, but there's no reason for it.
I'm definitely gonna check out that movie though. That looks dope as hell.
You should. Mask of the Phantasm is great. It's sad. You'll be like, am I upset at an animated Batman movie? Yeah. So next, we're leaving Reddit. We're heading on over to the Doc Scored.
Oh, I've got this. I got this.
Do? Okay, yeah, go. Take it away.
Dachshund scored and Dachshund where? Dachshund scored without a good ducks. Dachshund scored and you will ducks. Dachshund scored up, ducks are scoring. Ducks is scored a wing, ducks is scored a wing, ducks is screaming the scored of night. Ducks is scored a wing, ducks is scored a wing. I don't remember the rest of the words.
It's so funny that, I mean, I love that. Amazing. My kid, as you know, likes spooky things. We watch a lot of Corpse Bride and Coraline and Nightmare Before Christmas and Addams Family and Hotel Transylvania. She likes, quote, spooky things.
Yeah.
And her big thing right now is to make me do all the different voices from Nightmare Before Christmas. So sometimes she'll just come up and be like, do the mayor asking Jack for help.
I'm only an elected official. I can't make decisions by
Here to go over the
myself.
plans for next Halloween. Jack! I'm only an elected official.
Have you checked the lake?
Skeleton Jack is now a pile of dust. So we've been doing a lot of that in the house lately.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird when she wants me to do Oogie Boogie, though, because I got to be careful not to, like, accidentally do black voice kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't be too
It's a-
jazzy to use a deeply problematic term.
You gotta watch what you're doing with your hands here.
Well, that, and then I realized I was, like, doing lines, and then I was like, a tinkle, 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 a tinkle, tinkle.
Yeah.
What? You trying
You're
to
like,
make
no.
a dupe out of me?
No. R.I.P. Ken Page.
Yeah, gone too soon. So, first question on the dog scored comes from Butt Fart Butt, who asks, is it true that Dr. Phosphorus is constantly in pain? I think so. And that, if that's not a product of the neuron thing, it should be. I don't remember if it's from the get-go that he's like constantly in pain or whatever, or if it's like one of those monkey paw things where he like gets more power from Neuron and then Neuron's like, but also it sucks for you.
Right.
I can't remember what the situation is, but it totally makes sense. He's constantly on fire.
So, but clarifying again though,
Yeah.
does he have skin?
Yes.
So so he has skin that's invisible that's on fire.
Yeah,
Would be painful.
And I think at some point, like I said, like he went from having like a body on fire to kind of being like almost like a
just
living
energy,
a living chemical radiation fire.
Yeah.
But to the point where I would say it's probably less like a character like Captain Atom, who is literally just energy contained in a suit.
Yeah.
And probably more like Swamp Thing, where the energy has like approximated a human body.
Right. Well, because I was going to say, like, so invisible skin often is hand in hand with invisible organs. So it's not that he's actually his skeleton. He has all of those human parts still,
Right.
but they're invisible. And so literally all of that is just continually being actively damaged and broken down.
Totally.
Like,
But there is a point where I don't remember the exact issue.
where he just kind of transitions away from that body.
There's sort of a thing where it's like he doesn't have to eat or anything because he generates his own energy. Like he is
right.
He kind of becomes less and less human as time goes on, I think.
Right. Which, I mean, if you were that radioactive, would be happening.
But also, if you were still in pain at that point, that's just cruel. That just proves, I think actually that proves that God does exist and he hates you. To be like, I'm not even technically a body anymore. Why was I made to feel pain? Yeah. Next question comes from Mars, who asks, who do you think... Oh, this is where you can come alive, I think. Okay. This question is, who do you think has the best strategy for hiding a boner in spandex?
Oh, thank God. So here's the thing. This is the one time I think invisible flesh really helps, because
there's not actual bones in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And so
Director Bones, they're just like, your fly's open. He's like, yes, and that's all it is.
my fly. On an unrelated note, do not walk within 8 inches of me.
8 inches? Oh, all right, Director Bones. Hell yeah.
Yeah, but for so many of these characters, they've kind of taken a form a little bit beyond a costume.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, if you are energy, like, be hard all you want.
Cursed sentence. Awful thing to say.
I honestly put that on a motivational poster. Hang that above your desk at work.
Hard. The picture is Dr. Phosphorus with a raging Woody, and it just says, be hard all you want.
It's just like, you know, the sticks you see at a nuclear reactor, like in The Simpsons, what goes down the shirt? Yeah. It's just one of those.
Jesus Christ. That's what it would look like on Blight. He just wouldn't have the black skeleton in it, but he'd have like a full on glowing green dongus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Be hard all you want was the gross thing that was said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for most of them, their costumes actually lend themselves pretty well to being able to hide it.
I mean, listen, Mr. Bones used to wear a kind of spandexy superhero costume.
Yeah.
It was like red. It had like bandoliers and like weird cape and shit.
But
you would notice it there, it would bulge. But
Yeah.
now he wears a suit. Now he
A
can do the
suit.
old belt tuck.
Yeah. Or a suit, you just don't go with the fitted. You don't go with a fitted
Yeah,
suit.
you want like
You
a
go
zoot suit.
slightly.
Yeah, you want like
No,
a giant
no,
baggy zoot suit in case you get bonesed.
no. That's why Bruce wore such big suits.
That's because he was
He was always hard. That's how we got on stage. He was just always hard.
He was,
Can you? I would love. So, Edna Mode, when she was designing the outfits for the Incredibles,
Oh, God.
was like trying to take into account their powers.
Right.
But like, two of the children hadn't gone through puberty yet.
sure.
So I would love to see how you like address like a prepubescent boy having to wear like a spandex superhero outfit, because he's gonna need more help than any of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think the costumes were designed to like grow with them. They just get a new costume.
But that's what I mean. Like he's gonna come back at 13 with a crackly voice, and she's gonna go, "Oh God, I'm not
Yeah.
ready."
But where are you going with this? You're saying that he's going to come in at 13. She's going to be like, I should let out the dong, like she's going to
No, like, she's gonna need to, like-
retailer just the crotchal region of the.
Basically, he just gets sweatpants. He gets gray sweatpants for 2 years until he
No,
can
not-
control himself.
Not gray sweatpants. That's the worst thing to wear. Jesus. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
To truly answer this question, I actually don't think it would be as big of an issue for most of these characters, because again, the bone is not really.
Atomic Skull wears mostly armor. Not going to
Yeah.
notice it. Director Bones wears a suit now. He can
Yep.
belt tuck. Dr. Phosphorus wears pants, but he doesn't typically wear a shirt, I think. So if he
Right.
belt tucked, you would just see like the little like mushroom.
I thought you were going with like distract them with up top so they're not looking down below.
No, I'm thinking you just see the little tip of his penis.
That's
Just
upsetting.
sticking out.
That's upsetting.
I'll throw one that Lord Deathman wears a full suit.
Also, he's a yogi. He could bend it into
also-
some sort of position.
But also, Lord Deathman is a dang ass freak, so I think he would die hard. Oh my god, is that what that movie's about?
Nakatomi.
I think he would. I think he would die hard, and he'd be like nice, and then he'd come back.
No, I stand by my thought is that he's this yogi, and he can just bend it. He can bend it into whatever position. He
back up.
tucks. Yeah, he tucks.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, it's possible. Lord Deathman might tuck. Yeah, more like yeah, he tucks, but he's more like Lord Death Drop. Am I right? Drag queen joke. I'm going to throw, not strictly speaking, a skeleton, but a corpsey, skeleton-y adjacent
Okay.
character out there. Necron, essentially like a version of Death, wears kind of long, flowy death robes. Perfect for concealing a sort of cosmic boner.
I mean, we're also ignoring the fact that like for a boner you need blood flow. And so none of these characters, like a Necron, I'm assuming is some sort of like zombie undead. There's no blood flow. Invisible radioactive flesh, there's no blood flow. You're already dead, there's no blood flow. Like
Yeah, I mean,
maybe they're all just like soft flaccid boys.
I would be mad too.
Me, right? I don't know why I just shouted me. I'm sorry.
Me, right?
I just tried to be part of the conversation, but it was the wrong time.
Me, right?
Me. It's on my business card. Yes. Mallory, nice to meet you. Soft, flaccid boy. Often mad.
What was the name he said? Like Henry Ross Diddler. I'm the children's party clown you hired.
His initials would have to be THE Diddler.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
Thomas Henry Edward Diddler.
Yeah. He introduces himself that way. Yeah. Me, Jerry Randall Tolkien.
Donald Ronald Donald.
Oh, God. All right, next question. Comes from JK, who asks, so how did Mr. Bones go from a member of Infinity Inc. into a bureaucrat for a spy organization? Also, we're just ignoring the thing about him being part of the Kane family, right? Now, I don't remember that little bit, but just for context, the Kanes are Batman's maternal side of his family. So Batwoman is his cousin on that side, Kate Kane.
Kate Kane. And now I'm going to throw a name out here who I know is a hockey player, but I think might also be a DC character.
Are you going to say
but might just
Kane?
be hockey? It's Evander Kane.
Just a hockey player.
Oh, shit.
Absolutely. But honestly,
Would be a great DC name, though, right?
Comic book name. But yeah,
okay.
Just a hockey player. That's
okay.
Yeah, Evander Kane.
Stupid.
But I mean, Bones and Batwoman had a thing like through the New 52. They knew each other and worked with each other and like shit like that or whatever. But I don't remember them implying that he is part of that family, because I don't think he is. His name is he has a name. It's hang on, it's like something Todd, Richard Todd or Robert Todd or something like that. Like Director Bones has an actual name. Bones is like the name he gives himself when he's part of Helix, that like super team that Dr. Love made. God. Dr. Love.
Dr. Made Love.
Yeah.
Jesse Kane. Is that it? Nope, that's a character from Bones. Oh, Google, you've let me down.
Yeah, no. That's kind of
Robert Tubb.
That's sort of amazing, though.
Robert Todd is what you're going for. You
ended up on the Bones wiki.
On the Bones wiki.
Yeah. Incredible. I love that.
Better than ending up on the Boners wiki, honestly. That's going to get me on a list. cursed
site. How did he go from being a member of Infinity Inc. to working for the DEO? Honestly, I think that's... Well, sorry. What I should say is, I can't remember if they kind of go back and fill that in, but I sort of feel like it's more that he was kind of an obscure character, and then like later in a DEO thing, they were like, who would be an interesting character to pop up here? And they could have been by look, or it could have been by whatever, and they were like, why don't we use Mr. Bones? He hasn't been used in anything in a while. And they throw him in, and you go like, why are you here? And he goes like, well, I made the move. And you go, okay. Like that kind of shit happens in comics sometimes. Like, good example is like how they're using Sarge Steel in Wonder Woman right now is essentially like that, where he just shows up. You go like, you weren't here before. And he goes like, I am now. And you go, all right. And you kind of just leave it, you know? So
in a couple of things that I read, while it wasn't clear between Infinity Inc. and why he joined the DEO, I do like the storyline that led to him leaving Infinity Inc. and them eventually kind of like disbanding.
So that's the one where he gets like mind controlled into killing Dr. Love. Is that it?
No. So this is where, so it says Harlequin basically tricks Bones and tricks Solomon Grundy into grabbing Bones. And so... And so, like, that affects Solomon Grundy. And then he uses, like, his, like, cyanide arm to kill Skyman.
That's who he kills. It wasn't Dr. Love. That's right. He kills Skyman, who is the original Star-Spangled Kid.
Yeah.
That's who it is. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And then after...
And then he like, leaves because he's like, well, that's fucked up. I mean, like, I think he goes on the run for a bit, and Infinity Inc. is like, we know it wasn't your fault, blah, blah, blah. But he kind of, like, hangs it up because he's like, I killed Skyman. That sucks.
Exactly. And then so he leaves. Dr. Love gains control of Helix and then says, you need to go kill him. And then everyone's like, no, actually, we're going to kill you.
Right. That's where I got the Dr. Love dying thing from. That's
Yeah. But
at some point,
in the couple of things that I did read before this about Mr. Bones, basically it like tells that story and then it says like and then he
Yeah,
did this. It doesn't say like why. There's no why.
and honestly, I don't know that there needs to be a great story reason for why. I mean, beyond that, he was a sometime villain, went hero, got this traumatic thing happen to him, and he kind of like, if anything, you kind of go from there. You go like, I, I think metahumans are. I think we got to keep an eye on them from even
Right.
his personal experience. I think it totally works as a motivator. I don't know that we need to know like what was his job interview like, how did he get in the door. Like I don't think we need to know that stuff.
I do have a question about the DEO though. Like, is that like, is it like an office job or is he still actively out doing like superhero stuff?
No, because he's the director of the DEO.
Yeah.
So he's like the guy in the office watching the
Yeah.
screens and sending agents out and stuff.
And signing everyone's time cards.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, he's got to approve vacation and stuff like that.
Yeah,
PTO.
yeah. He's saying, he's like, "Hey, Mister Terrific, you gotta send in your vacation request 6 weeks in advance."
He's doing like the like fucking Dwight trying to pick the health plan. Like,
The one with the least benefits.
yeah, he's like, who needs skincare? And they'd be like, the rest of us. Um,
He has to keep doing harassment training because his cyanide hands touch stuff in the break room.
yeah, yeah. He's an ocean nightmare.
Yeah.
But the DEO has shifted every once in a while. Like I think the most recent version of the DEO, they were like hunting basically characters on Prime Earth, on Earth Zero, that were from elsewhere in the multiverse or from ended timelines and stuff. They were basically like rounding up like multiversal and like hyper time refugees and
Right.
stuff. It was all connected to stuff that was happening during Infinite Frontier and, you know, like all post death metal kind of ramifications of the multiverse existing, especially because the big thing after death metal is that everyone knows the multiverse exists. I don't just mean superheroes, I mean everyone
Yeah.
on Earth. Random civilians now understand that a multiverse exists. And so part of what the DEO started doing was like, well, if everybody knows, then we should actually start like managing these incursions from, I'm using a Marvel word, I shouldn't, because that it sort of implies something else. But basically the DEO took that kind of stuff on. And then there was all this other stuff, like Bones got caught up in stuff during Infinite Frontier or during Dark Crisis, Infinite Frontier, and he kind of like reverted to his older form and more villainy and stuff. Hector Hammond was revealed, like a new, like kind of rebirthed, you know, in the metafiction sort of way, version of Hector Hammond was revealed to be part of the DEO. So I don't know that we've seen the DEO since a bunch of shit went wrong with it.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
I do think
They had a
this is-
shift ship. They had like a multiversal like shift ship, like the carrier from the Authority and shit like that.
Right.
Like they became way bigger than just like Amanda Waller at a desk sending the Suicide Squad out. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I do think that just as like a regular person, having confirmation that there's a multiverse, I don't think anything would fuck me up more.
It's actually worse than that too. It's not just that people found out there was a multiverse. It's that people found out that their histories had changed.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
everyone
no.
on Earth had an awareness because they would just basically at the end of death metal, this event, it unravels all the continuities and says it all happened. Some version of it happened to you, and basically now people just go like, "Oh, you were dead, but you weren't. You just weren't born, but now you are." Like people just have that knowledge.
No. No. I'm going off a bridge. I'm sorry. That's way too much.
It does seem crazy, doesn't it?
That's way too much. Yeah. And so like in the grand scheme of things, one of the roles I would least want is being like the head bureaucrat in charge of like making sure that these like multiversal interactions are going not to plan, but like
Yeah.
are going well. Like that's a nightmare.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
That's a
that sounds
nightmare.
awful. Yeah.
Good on you, Mr. Bones.
Final question comes from
Okay.
You shall not pass. Constipated Gandalf, who asks, do you prefer Black Mask's skull visage or the other alternatives that he's worn in the comics? So, Black Mask, a Batman villain, a crime lord, not a guy with powers. He was the head of the False Face Society and stuff
Oh,
like that, but for the most part, we just know him as here's the craziest thing. So he kind of looks like he has a skull face there. But the crazier thing is that it's a mask fused to his head.
oh no. I'm sorry.
It gets like melted onto him or some shit like that. So he has like a regular human head underneath a melted black skull mask.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. The very first picture you get when you Google this, that is like I'm gonna see that when I close my eyes tonight.
Did you just type Black Mask DC?
Yes, I had to make sure I put the DC because I was like, I don't know what's gonna come up.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
Like
a great look though.
that's horrifying.
I love that look.
I do like the ones where it's like slightly more stylized, like where it's got a bit more of the silver.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like in the game in Arkham Origins, it's like an actual mask, and it's not
Yeah.
melted onto him yet.
Yeah.
There's, I would say there's the version where it's like a more like almost like a techie kind of mask that was from Year of the Villain.
Yeah.
And that gave him. That's when Apex Lex was going around like boosting the powers of all the villains, and he gave Black Mask basically the ability to camouflage his face as any face. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't choose that face. If
There's
you
also a version of Black Mask where it's clearly a mask, but it looks like goggles and zippers. Like it's sort of got like a leather daddy kind of thing to it.
Okay.
That's more like New 52 and into
Right.
Rebirth kind of era Black Mask.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Black
Yeah.
Mask from like Red Hood and the Outlaws
Okay.
sort of has this sort of. Yeah, I
Yeah.
keep saying leather daddy. I'm picturing Tobias Funke. You mean leather daddy? Is there such a thing? I want something that says "Dad loves leather."
Daddy needs to get his rocks off. I do think the Black Mask white suit look
Yes,
is pretty killer. Like that's very sharp.
it's so fucking cool. Like black shirt, white tie, white
Yes.
3-piece suit, the
Yeah.
black mask.
Yeah, that's very
Did
cool.
you see Birds of Prey? Because that's the one like film live action appearance of Black Mask.
I have seen Birds of Prey. It's not. It's clearly not the most memorable part of that movie for me, though, because I don't.
That's who Ewan McGregor is. He's Black
Oh,
Mask.
okay.
He's
Okay.
Roman Sionis. He only
Okay.
puts the mask on near the end of the movie, like for the third
Yeah.
act.
Okay.
And it's an actual mask. And in that movie, he
Yes.
explodes and dies. So we don't do the thing of the mask melting onto him or anything
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just refreshing myself with what that looked like in the movie. It wasn't instantly recognizable to me comparing with like the comic photos.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite look is the melted on mask, where it looks like he is just a blackened skull wearing a cool suit.
Absolutely not.
It's like haunting and disgusting, but I think that's why I like it.
No, absolutely not. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. I like the more kind of like techie looking one was the word you used to describe it. I think that like the techie looking one with the white suit, the black shirt, the white tie, I think that's such a slick setup.
Because I like him as
I
a
don't
skull with just eyeballs and shit. Like,
no. No.
because Roman Sionis is like unhinged. Like,
Yeah.
I think like the Arkham games and some things do a good job of showing the Penguin as like a guy you don't want to cross, even as like a mob boss, a guy that'll
Right.
like, even in the comics, it's like you wrong him and he'll go and like make sure like your whole family dies and he won't kill you. And then he'll be like, well, you won't make that mistake again. Like
Right.
The Penguin is portrayed that way. Black Mask is portrayed as more crazy than that. Because the Penguin's is like a sort of quiet, calculated evil or cruelty. And Black Mask doesn't have the patience for that. He's like all the cruelty and none of the patience.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just that picture's gonna haunt me. I don't like it.
Fair enough.
Don't like it.
So there you go. That was the last question. That's it for this week. If you've got questions for future episodes, you'll see the calls for questions go out because Doctober is not done. Richard will be back next week. So I don't know what the theme's going to be. We'll pick something spooky like Italy.
Thank God he's back, because you were really scraping the bottom of the barrel with guests this week.
Yeah, I mean, woof. No. So hit us up with questions. You can find us on social media, Dr. DC Podcast, wherever you're looking for us. Subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Discord, our awesome Discord fan community. At the higher levels, you get double doses. And at the highest level, you get rewatch podcast series, including but not limited to Toretto Talks, the Fast and Furious rewatch that me and Mallory did. We're about to start a brand new rewatch series. I'll reveal right now that we are finally doing our namesake, rewatching the DC Extended Universe. So subscribe on Patreon, helps to support us. If you want more free stuff, go listen to Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch. We're going through every episode of the CW Supernatural. We talk about real world monster lore, behind the scenes stuff about the show. All of that is good to support us, but you're already supporting us. Go support Mallory. Mallory, hit them with the plugs. Where can they find you? What can they do?
You betcha. Instagram's the best place to find us. We're at Pop Capsule Pod. Make sure wherever you get your podcasts, you check us out. Our latest episode that we just recorded for this week, you also drop on Thursday, yes? Wednesday. So you're going to come out. So our podcast is dropping tomorrow. And we are talking about Team America World Police.
That is so funny because I've been talking about that with my wife lately. It's just like come back into our consciousness.
Well, and so again, for folks who haven't heard me plug it before, I am one half of the Pop Capsule Podcast, where we look at the top pop culture moments from 10 and 20 years ago. So right now we are looking at things in 2004 and 2014. And so at this time we had Team America that was coming out. We've had a couple of banger episodes in the last few weeks. Be sure to check us out. And a reminder, if you don't want to have to pay for the Patreon versions of Toretto Talks, just send me a DM and I will make sure that you get a copy off the side.
Insane. She's burning CDs of our podcast.
It's too long. It's on two VHS tapes.
I mean, it would be. Yeah, that's it for this week. Say goodbye.
Oh, actually?
Jesus. Still nothing.
You still... Goodbye.
Adios.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.